the week 5 defensive streamers. Who are the best pickups in the leagues right now? And to me, my actual number one defense of the week, not just streamer, number one ranked defense is the Denver Broncos. They're out there in nearly every league, only 19% rostered on Yahoo. And I think they should be the priority here. They are quietly the number 4 defense on the year right now in total fantasy points. And they actually have more fantasy points scored, 28 total, than real points allowed, 16 over their past 2 games. They are just shutting down teams. They genuinely just good defense. We know the secondary is phenomenal. And Pat Surtain may be the best corner in the league and lots of talent around him. The run D has been absolutely stifling this year compared to last year, too. They are top 5 in EPA allowed in terms of very few APAs allowed throughout the games. They've been a top 10 fantasy defense in 3 out of 4 games. This is their totals: 10, 6, 15, 11. No real duds and all very solid production. And they have faced some decent offenses in Seattle, Tampa Bay, the Jets. They've just been flat out good. And now you get the Raiders, who have given up the 5th most points to opposing defenses, 14 sacks, 6 turnovers allowed on the season. I think that this is going to be a phenomenal spot at home in a game with an over-under that's below 37. I love it. I'm a huge fan of the Denver defense, and I think another 15-ish point effort is very much in the realm of possibility. Now, I also really like the Seahawks this week, too. They're 12th in total fantasy points so far. They've really feasted upon weaker competition, though. We saw them kind of be fraudulent there against the Lions, get blown out. Not even blown out. They played real tight, but the defense got the doors blown off them last night. But you look at when they faced Denver, New England, Miami, those were all really impressive totals. They had 11 total sacks, 3 turnovers, and averaged 11 points per game when facing those 3. And the reason I bring that up is because they get the Giants, the 6th most generous team to fantasy defenses. They're scoring 15 points per game, rushing only for 85 yards per game. Both of those are 30th in the league. We know the Giants are not a good offense. They do have the dangerous threat of Malik Neighbors, but other than that, this is not a good team. So as long as Seattle can show up and kind of do what they've done against weaker opponents, I think it would be a smash week. Now, the only buyer beware situation here, though, is the Giants have they had a horrible week 1. 22 fantasy points were surrendered to the team they faced. But then since then, they've only allowed 4, 6, and 4 fantasy points to the teams they faced. So it could be the fool's gold of the week, but I do think Seattle Seahawks make a great pickup. They're still a top 5 defense for me this week. New England, though, this is a great week for D-streamers as well. 5% rostered. They've done nothing as a unit since week 1. They had that huge upset on the road against Cincy. Defense put up 11 fantasy points, and then they've just been abysmal. But they get a Dolphins team coming to Gillette Stadium, to their home turf here. 3rd most points allowed to defenses, 11.25 points per game. And since losing Tua, they've given up 18, 13, and 10 fantasy points on the season. And I know this team, the Pats, it's not great, but this Dolphins team has scored 10, 3, and 12 points and allowed at least 2 sacks in those last 3 games. So minimal scoring and only at least 2 sacks a game. This is a slot fest written all over it type of game. I think New England can run. They can then get the ball to the defense and let them just do their thing, tee off against Tyler Huntley, who, another week would probably look better in this scheme, but not anything I'm scared of. And then my last guy on this list, my last defense that you could consider streaming, but I'm going in the order I would rank them, as just to make sure that's clear, is Indy. 14% rostered. They've been really strong. They've averaged 11 fantasy points across their last 2 weeks. They have 8 sacks and 5 turnovers in those last 2 games. And we saw this last year. They had these hot streaks where they were the number 1 defense from week 4 to week 10. They were just racking up 15 to plus point days. They now had 4 sacks in 3 out of 4 games, and the Jags are surrendering 3.3 sacks per game. Seems like a perfect marriage of the skills of this defense and the faults and flaws of the offense they're facing. Trevor Lawrence, 32nd in completion rate, 22nd in pass yards, 26th in passer rating. He is just awful. He hasn't turned the ball over a ton, which I know is what you're looking for a fantasy defense. But 0-4, they're going to be desperate, and I think this defense is just going to tee off them. All the talk is they are rudderless right now, is what the Jordan Schultz quote was. They do not have – they're quitting. Every week you see the Jags quit. They're pathetic. So, I think they are great. But, again, I would go Broncos, Seahawks, Colts, Pats. They are kind of at the bottom of that. But I would go Pats over the Colts if I had to pick between them.